Howdy friends, vinyl community, music lovers, welcome to another episode of The Vinyl Survivor. This is where I talk about 5 albums pulled from my inbox, usually something that's new to my ears, and clean them up, give them a listen, and let you know what I thought of each one, let you know whether they're going to be staying in the collection or going away. So let's just start it off with the 8th album from Billy Joel, titled The Nylon Curtain from 1982. This album is from the early 80s and has to do with dealing with a lot of the sort of struggling economy of the early 80s. There was a huge amount of inflation that went on in the late 70s. The early 80s were just a really tough time period, so this has to do with a lot of factories and stuff going overseas. And the first song, Allentown, opens with a sort of talking about the struggle of factories closing and people not being able to find work and things like that. So a pretty good album here from Billy Joel. You got Pressure, one of my favorite Billy Joel songs of all time. Goodnight Saigon, She's Right on Time. Just a pretty good album. Was nominated for Album of the Year in 1983 for Album of the Year Grammy. Did not win, but was nominated. Insert here with lyrics and whatnot. And of course, this being Billy Joel album, you got the Columbia label, and this has Sterling TJ in the dead wax, so that's mastered by Ted Jensen at Sterling. And I picked this up in a free collection I got from someone who knew I collected vinyl, and they all, or most of them, had this little bit of water damage to them. There was a flood at one point, I guess, and they tried to save them the best they could, and they got to them before there was too much damage. But they all have a little bit of water damage, so probably look for an upgrade to this at some point. But all the albums themselves in this collection were super nice, well taken care of. So that's Billy Joel's The Nylon Curtain. That one's going to be staying in the collection. I enjoy listening to Billy Joel from time to time, and this is definitely a memorable one for me, being from my early youth and whatnot in the early 80s, and just remembering that time period. Okay, second up we have today, going back in time a bit, this is Billy Joel's 52nd Street from 1978. 52nd Street having to do with, I believe there was a lot of jazz clubs in New York on 52nd Street, and this album definitely has some jazz influences to it. You actually get Freddie Hubbard plays on the track Zanzibar on here, but you got Big Shot, My Life, 52nd Street. Another great album from Billy Joel. This one as well was nominated for Album of the Year in 1979, and it did win. This is the Billboard Album of the Year, or the Grammy-winning Album of the Year for 1979, and just a very well-known album. And another one from that collection, I said they had the water damage. I got quite a bit of Billy Joel from that collection. Photograph and some liner notes in here, and the same Columbia label with the family production little logo there at the top. And this one is Sterling TJ as well, Ted Jensen at Sterling mastering. And I guess that's about all. This is another one that's going to be staying in the collection. As I said, I enjoy listening to Billy Joel, and I really enjoy hearing albums rather than sort of a greatest hits kind of thing, because all his albums tended to have a few hits on them at least, and so you get the best of both worlds. You get some songs you don't hear that often, along with songs you know really well, and so I enjoy that. So that's another one going in the collection. I think that's the last of the Billy Joel for a while, I promise. But what we have next here is an album from the Moody Blues. We've been talking about the Moody Blues a lot recently in other episodes. This is a very late piece. This is from 1986, titled "The Other Side of Life" by the Moody Blues. So this is very, very late 80s, near the end there. Being the 80s, there's a lot more of a synthesizer kind of 80s sound, but at times it sort of sounds like a 60s band struggling, trying to make you know, a modern sound work for them. Chicago did the same thing with a little more success, but it just doesn't work as well with the Moody Blues as far as I'm concerned. Did have a pretty big hit on here, Your Wildest Dreams. Very, very big 80s hit that you'll still hear from time to time. And another track on here, Rock and Roll Over You, which is probably my favorite song on the album, was featured in the Karate Kid 2. But yeah, overall, sort of a lackluster album from the Moody Blues. Definitely, I'm a huge fan of the Moody Blues, and I want to have all of their stuff. And I like some stuff on here, but this is probably not going to be a go-to for me, and definitely not a recommended starting place for the Moody Blues as far as I'm concerned. That's the insert, and liner notes and lyrics and whatnot. And that's on the Polydor Threshold label. I guess Polydor was the one who was doing the London Records releases kind of thing. Not really sure about that. Yeah, but nothing of note in the dead wax on this one. So Moody Blues, Other Side of Life, very commercial sounding 80s light sort of synthy album from the Moody Blues. And so it's going to be staying in the collection just because I want to have all of the Moody Blues albums I can. Okay, moving on, back to Bruce Springsteen. We have Bruce's 5th album from 1980 titled The River, a double album from Bruce. Originally he submitted this as a single album and just had so much material to work with that he decided to recall that and resubmit this album as a double album. Just a huge outpouring of content from him at the time, along the same lines as Billy Joel's album we talked about earlier. This is, right at 1980, right in the middle of that recession that came in the late 70s, the fuel costs going through the roof and massive inflation and whatnot, and just dealing with a lot of those same kind of themes of just the blue-collar worker struggling to make it, struggling to find work, and kind of sort of the times we've been going through more recently now. So, being the sort of troubadour he is, Bruce Springsteen sort of embraced that and wrote songs about those themes and about that struggle, and came away with a pretty good hit here. Get songs like Hungry Heart and The River on here, and there are a lot of different themes and stuff running through the album. Some are more dark and moody. There's some just some more happy, kind of enjoyable summertime kind of songs on here as well. Just a great album from him. So, being a 2 LP set, quite a bit of material in here. Here is one of the inner sleeves, some photographs and liner notes of the band. And here's some more on the other sleeve. And then as well, you get a nice sort of fold-out lyric sheet with even more photographs in there. So a nicely packaged album. It is not a gatefold. It's just a thick double LP sleeve. And once again, we got the red and orange Columbia label there. Nothing of interest in the dead wax on this one, but just a classic album from Bruce Springsteen, The River. This is another one that'll be staying in the collection. I enjoy listening to Bruce's work, and this is a really interesting time capsule. And as I said, a very strong period where he was really able to write a lot of songs, and they're all really good. So I really enjoy this album, so staying in the collection. Okay, and last thing we have to talk about today is another Bruce Springsteen album. This one's from 1982. This is titled Nebraska, and among Bruce Springsteen fans, this is a well-loved album, a very dark album. Interesting to note about this album that it was recorded as a demo. He basically took a 4-track sort of home studio mixer kind of thing and recorded this album, played all the instruments, sung all the songs, did everything himself, and it was meant to be just a demo and something for the band to sort of take and rework the songs and re-record the songs, and the E Street Band and him actually went into the studio and reworked all these songs and re-recorded them all as a band, and they ended up discarding that and not using that, and they released it as it was, as a demo, as it was right off the 4-track Porta Studio cassette, home studio cassette. So being that way, this album is very raw, it's very stripped down, it's very, I wouldn't say it's very rough, but it's somewhat rough around the edges. It's, you know, it was meant to be a demo, as I said, but just some really cool songs on here. The inner sleeve there, lyrics on it, and once again the red and orange Columbia label. And this has Atlantic Studios, DK, and the Dead Wax. So that's Dennis King at Atlantic did the mastering on this, and you know, considering the source of the material and the source of the recording and how it was recorded, and it was meant to be a demo to begin with, it sounds very good, and it's a very intimate album from Bruce Springsteen, and I think that's why it is so well loved amongst his fans. It's just very intimate and works well with the material. Some of the material is very dark and dealing with murder and stuff like that, and it's just an interesting sort of dark horse kind of album. So Bruce Springsteen, Nebraska, absolutely going in the collection. Really interesting album from Bruce Springsteen, and one you don't hear much from very often, just because it's not real, you know, radio friendly kind of stuff here, but a good album. And I got this one at the library sale for $1.25, so that was a pretty good price for this one. So thanks for watching another episode of the Vinyl Survivor. If you love the show, please subscribe. We do try to do at least one of these a week, if not more. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you to all those who are already subscribed and watching all along. Thank you. Really appreciate you all watching and commenting and liking and all that. So stay tuned for lots more. Thanks for watching. See you again soon. Cheers.